Hi guys, welcome to the SportsKhabri podcast, and we're back discussing European football. And this time it's time to talk about Tottenham Hotspur. I've got Anshuman Joshi with me, Kaustubh Pandey, and Alok. We're all here to give our opinion about Spurs and debate and discuss as to where Spurs will finish come the end of the season. First of all, Alok, you are the head for India Spurs. How are you feeling at this point in time? Spurs are currently placed fourth in the table, a few points off Newcastle. How do you feel right now?
Yeah, it's not been the season that we all thought it would be. We are just in top four, and that's also because Newcastle kind of is are inconsistent over the last few months. Liverpool are not performing as well as they should. Chelsea, of course, they're out of this even conversation of top four right now. So I don't think we are there because we are playing good or we are playing well. It's because the other teams are not performing as much as good they should be. So really not happy with where we are in the table, or probably the way we are in the top four right now.
But Costa, would you say that given everything, regardless of whether Spurs are playing the beautiful way or not, they've done just about enough to stay in the top four?
I mean, I think they have, but I think if you look at the way Antonio Conte's team play, like on a weekly basis, like I followed him closely over the years, this never feels, I think, especially this season, this never felt like a Conte team. Uh, in terms of the way they play, because Conte teams have been absolute masters at going 1-0 up in the first 30 minutes, then playing on the break using a mid block, and then scoring maybe two or three goals and winning the games 3-0 or 4-0, which is what they sort of did last season, games against, I think, Aston Villa and Newcastle, where they went 1-0 up. As soon as the opposition was on to them in the second half, they scored a couple of more goals, 1 3-0 4-0. That's what Conte's teams have been experts at. But it's been the opposite at Spurs this season, where they start poorly, concede first, or if they don't concede first, they have these absolutely weird first halves, be it in the Champions League or the FA Cup or the Premier League. They go 1-0 down and then they sort of wake up and realize that maybe this is our time to create something. And I think that also shows that uh, in a way, I don't think Conte has trained or coached this team in the proper way, which is sad to see because over the last 5 years or 6 years or something, Conte's Inter was probably the best team I saw structurally in terms of how they built from the back and played through lines quickly. I've not seen any semblance of that at Spurs, which uh, I think doesn't show in the table. But I think we somewhere need to give credit to Conte for it because after Pochettino, last season, I think the second half of last season was the best that Spurs have probably played in terms of the underlying numbers or, the way they played as well, kept clean sheets, won these big games when they needed to. I mean, I don't think they lost too many games either. So I think this season specifically has been a massive disappointment. And I think a lot of it is because of how the recruitment was done and how the team was supposed to be coached, but it hasn't. A lot of it is down to the personnel he has on to take with himself. But I think it could have been much better. But considering the expectations we had and the way Spurs sort of streets almost steamrolled second half of last season, I think I expected them to at least be third. I mean, they're not too far off. They can still finish third if things go uh, well-ish, I must say, because I think they're just 1 point behind United, who do have games in hand, but United have their own issues right now in terms of Casemiro not being available in their squad depth and all of that. So there's still a chance that Spurs can finish third with or without Conte. That's a different conversation. But I think I expected at least a third finish for them. When season started, I expected them to finish second and challenge for the title for a fair bit. So if you're comparing it to that, it's a disappointment. But in terms of how the season has been, even if we don't look at the expectations we had with the context of what happened at the end of last season, I think it's been a disappointment. I mean, quite a disappointment, I must say. I mean, Alok just pointed out that if we compare, if we put into picture the fact that Liverpool and Chelsea haven't been at their best, they've had these massive issues of their own. I think that's probably a big reason why Spurs are in the top four. And I mean, Newcastle can still come alive at any point. We don't know about Brighton as well, because I think Brighton are one of the most exciting teams to watch in Europe. Again, Italian connection there. I mean, I'm not biased in this case, but you know, I think it's still been quite underwhelming in terms of how the Spurs team has looked. It has never come across as a Conte team for me, personally speaking.
Yeah. Anshuman, two questions for you. Firstly, as somebody who put down Spurs to challenge for the title, to see them sort of scraping fourth place, and Costa mentioned that they could finish third, but they could easily go the other way. Newcastle are a couple of points behind them with games in hand. Brighton have 3 games on them, and they're about 6-7 points behind them. So any of these sides could easily catch them. Do you see Spurs going further down the table? And have you sort of reassessed your claim about Spurs at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, so I definitely have to take the L on that one. Despite having provided as many caveats as I did at the time that prediction's a fool's game, half of the prediction you make will work, half of them won't work. Most of my essentially wanting Spurs to win the title was more wishful thinking than it was a calculated guess. And one thing that I had to keep in mind that when you think about Antonio Conte, you need to keep in mind that his projects are extremely short term. Now, whether they result in a success or not, or what your definition of success is besides the point. But given that short-termist aspect and taking into account the fact that they had a half season in which they were incredibly well, played quite well, and they looked quite drilled on their way to attaining Champions League position last season, I genuinely thought that if there ever was a chance for Antonio Conte at Spurs to deliver the title, this was it. When you keep in mind the fact that Liverpool and City both are subject to psychological drains, they can mitigate their way through that, but they're subject to that because of how long both of their managers have been at the club. And every 2-3 seasons, we see that with City, we see this with Liverpool as well. So one team had the chance to take it. Luckily for us, it's Arsenal who has taken that chance, and their proper planning over the last couple of seasons is now bearing fruit. And for all intents and purposes, I hope Arsenal win the league and not City, because anyone would City would be fine for me at this point as far as predictions are concerned. Do I see Spurs retaining the top four? I have to say that I don't, because the teams that Spurs are competing for, when you compare them with Newcastle, Brighton, Liverpool on their end, they have precedence to come roaring back into the business end of the season, as we saw 2 seasons ago. So they will back themselves up for that very reason, that okay, we have done this before, we can't make this happen again. Brighton and Newcastle, this is basically a free hit for them, because if they keep their cards right, play their cards right, they just play the way that they have performed at through the rest of the season, at least they have Europe guaranteed for them, and that will be a big step for both of those teams, regardless of what you make of the projects of the two respective clubs. The thing with Tottenham is Antonio Conte, for his own reasons, has essentially come out and told Levy to just let him go. So when you need to keep into the mind the squad dynamics here, because this is a manager that does not want to be at Tottenham. He just does not want to be. And Tottenham is a club, when you have a manager that has absolutely no desire to continue and has come out and said things that the way he has, it becomes very hard for then the players to be rallied together and salvage a season compared to the likes of the teams who have a lot more intent and a lot more cohesion and a lot more constructive, healthier dynamic with their coaching department that they have. And why I point out the reasons for Conte to not wanting to be at Spurs, I think it's not just a Spurs thing. I think he just does not want to be in work at all for the time being, because you need to keep in mind that this is a man who has had 3 different bereavements this season in Gianpiero Ventrone, Gianluca Vialli, and Sinisa Mihailovic. He has lost 3 close friends in very, very quick succession. And on a personal level as well, he has sustained a cholecystectomy, removal of the gallbladder. So this is a man who, in general, I think wants to have family time, because even in his recovery, we saw that he was making himself available for the Italian legs and wasn't coming to England all the way. He's still living in a hotel. So all of these things become a lot more pertinent when you think about what is happening in his personal life. So I think at this point, he just wants to go home and just take a break, Whether he's at a football club or not is irrelevant. But when we think about what is happening at the football club as well, I think it becomes a lot more important to point out that Conte's projected projection of success has a ceiling at Spurs the same way Jose Mourinho had. That we always talk about these serial winners, and we always make all of us always make the same mistake of thinking that it's the narrative that drives the success and not the other way around. But the reality of the matter is it's always the outcome that drives the narrative, and you can use that narrative to wield your players together in such a position that you create an environment conducive for success. Whether success comes or not is a completely different thing. Success has a bit of degree of arbitration, whether we like to admit it or not. So the reason that Conte has had a ceiling here is because something that I wrote about this, I think, at the start of the last season. The Conte, when Spurs were having a very hard time hiring a manager, and one of the things that I pointed out at the time was that on one side you had Daniel Levy, who was talking about bringing back attractive football, Spurs DNA football, and on the other end you have Fabio Paratici, who by all means is a pragmatist, and he's going to recruit players to that end. So you had these two people in the hierarchy who with very diametrically opposite views. And both of them wanted to be integral to the squad making purpose, because it's Paratici's job. And Daniel Levy, despite having appointed a sporting director, did not want to let go of responsibilities. And you see that in the player recruitment as well. I mean, you look at the likes of Christian Romero, Destiny Udogie, who has went back to Udinese, yes, but you look at these players and you realize, even Ivan Perisic, that okay, these are the kind of onboardings that have happened because Paratici is here, because Conte is here. Otherwise, that would not have happened. But then you look at the likes of Fraser Foster and Richarlison and Jet Spence, who is now on Gent, and you think, okay, these are the kind of signings that Levy is wanting to make. So you have both of these different types of playing styles, different types of essentially aspirations of what Tottenham is supposed to do on the pitch, and it's not conflating together to make something constructive. It's just canceling each other out. So you are in the middle of in the middle of nowhere. So keeping that into mind, the fact that Spurs are still in fourth is remarkable. That tells you that Conte has an outcome driven pedigree, and he can deliver results to a certain aspect, which he has. And in establishing all of that context, the very fact that Spurs are still fourth is remarkable. But the other side of that story is also that a lot of teams have been underperforming who are just coming back into the season. So both of those things are simultaneously true. So the current situation for Conte is that he wants to go. We already know his reasons for wanting to leave, and they are less about Spurs and more about him personally, which is why he was in a position to come out and say the things he did. Because that is a kind of interview that essentially marks the point of no return. We saw Cristiano Ronaldo doing something very similar for his own personal reasons, which is a thing that he did beyond which everyone assumes, okay, there is no going back now. It's not an identical thing, but there are similar tones to what they were trying to achieve. So Conte essentially just don't want to be in work right now. He wants to be left alone with his family, and I can sympathize with that. It's a very understandable situation. But for Spurs in particular, it's a bit of an existential crisis all over again, because at least beforehand you could talk about that Spurs play attractive football. Okay, if there is nothing else that we have in a corner, is that at least football that we can enjoy. Daniel Levy comes in and he decides to make a bargain with the devil, that we'll bring someone in who is known to be a serial winner. You do that with Jose Mourinho. He obviously, in a Spurs context, has his own ceiling, and then you sack him 1 week before a cup final. Then you bring Nuno Espirito Santo, and he does not work out immediately because of all the reasons that Spurs were doing, all the things Spurs were doing at the start of last season. Then finally you bring in Conte, and the kind of recruitment that has been very mixed match. And we have seen in the past, even with Inter, we have seen that Conte's demands for players are very short-termist. His projects are very short-termist, and they could deliver you success in that time. But you have to back into that extent, because he has a very particular style of play that he wants to adhere to, and he wants his players to adhere to. And the current Spurs squad does not seem to be the kind of squad Costa pointed us out, that kind of squad that looks like a proper Conte team, despite him having been here for more than a year now. So again, this is a point of existentialism for Spurs fans. Okay, we tried with two serial winners, it didn't work out. We have tried the whole playing beautiful thing football, beforehand also. What exactly are we going to look for next? What exactly Daniel Levy thinks he wants to look for next? What kind of a meeting he has with Fabio Paratici when Conte is gone, for better or worse. If he doesn't go now, he goes by the end of the season. There is no way he can continue. There is no way he would want to continue. So all of these things need to be taken into account. And the biggest question, where like it lies on for this, if you are a Spurs fan, the thing you have to ask yourself is, what exactly are we supposed to do here? If we have tried the whole serial winning thing and that has also hasn't worked out, and you have the recruitment policy that is just canceling each other out as long as Levy and Paratici are working together in the way they are. So what exactly is the way forward? So that is a really existential question for Spurs fans.
Alok, it does look like Spurs will be losing Antonio Conte sooner rather than later. But once that does happen, as a fan, what are you looking for next? Are you looking for, let's just secure next season, or are you looking for a young and hungry manager who'll probably stay with the club for 3-4 seasons, back him, go through the process as they call it?
Uh, well, yeah, I think I agree with what most of what Anshuman and Kaustubh said in terms of what Daniel Levy tried to do when he hired Jose right after that project. Kind of, I wouldn't say failed, but kind of started going downhill after the point. And uh, the reason being, if you see what has happened in Daniel Levy's career in the last 20 years at Spurs or 21 years at Spurs, is that we've always tried to do it the right way, the Spurs way, right? We had Harry Redknapp, we had AVB. I wouldn't say he was massively attacking football manager, but still, it wasn't as pragmatic as probably Jose or Conte is. Then we had Pochettino coming in. Nobody expected Poch to do so well. Of course, the reasons were that the project or the objectives that was kept in front of Pochettino was to just deliver Champions League football before we could actually move to the new stadium, because we didn't have enough funds to do that. And we wanted to deliver Champions League football in the new stadium and then kick on from there. Actually, so we started over delivering. I mean, Pochettino started over delivering before the time, or before actually ahead of the schedule, and then we couldn't capitalize on it because most of our funds were just stuck in the particular stadium. The stadium project that was going on. Now, in 2019, once we moved to the new stadium and we had the Champions League final that we lost to Liverpool, that's when you can see that there is a change in the way that Tottenham started working in the transfer window as well. We got Ndombele that season, we got Los also that season, so we spent actually 150 million pounds in that season itself, in that transfer window, which is very unlikely for Tottenham to do. So you can see the change of strategy that Daniel Levy thought of there. And when that did not work out with Pochettino, what he thought was, okay, I've spent enough money. This team had just spent or had just featured in Champions League final with Liverpool. They beat some of the biggest teams on their way to the final. This team is probably good enough for someone like Jose or Conte, and he always wanted to have Jose at Spurs. It's 17, 18 years since he wanted Jose at Spurs, but he never could get him because we did not have enough caliber for Jose. And it's kind of weird that because Jose was kind of downhill and Spurs were uphill, so it's still not a marriage made in heaven. It's a compromise that both the team have done with each other, like the club and Jose, and it does not work out. The reason being, again, it's not the Jose team. It's not the way. It's not the board that Jose likes to work with, right? We won't spend 200 million pounds in a year to just give him 7 players that he wants. Just like we won't do the same thing for Conte. And now we are stuck with. So basically, Jose is stuck with Poch's team. Now Conte is stuck with Jose's team, and now the next manager would be stuck with Conte's team, because some of these players may not be right to play with Pochettino, or probably if we get Pochettino, or if we get De Zerbi, whoever. So it's going to be a long process from here on. And I think we should stop looking for short-term success, because it's not going to come to Tottenham, because for short-term success, you need to be able to spend 200, 300 million pounds in a short period, which we won't be able to do. That means that you need to have a project manager, give him enough time to nurture a team for 2 seasons, and 2 seasons after that, he can start actually challenging for the trophies. I won't say delivering the trophies, but at least challenging for the trophies. Now here we come at a very bad juncture in Tottenham's uh, recent history. Is that will Kane want to stay for another project? Uh, I'm not sure. Will Son want to stay for another project? No, because they are at the end. I wouldn't say end, but towards the end of their careers. Both are 29, 30 years old. They would want a trophy sooner rather than later. And if this project also does not work out, 2 years down the line, they probably wouldn't get the switch or the transfer that they are looking for. Uh, Considering all of that, I think I would want somebody, and whatever's happened last night with Nagelsmann getting sacked, and of course, as we all knew that when Jose was sacked, uh, Nagelsmann was one of the names on the top of the list when Levy wanted to sign another manager, and but Bayern already had a pre-contract signed with him, and all of that happened. Uh, so yeah, it works the best for us with Nagelsmann because he plays generally with three at the back. That's what the team is currently kind of being shaped under Conte to play three at the back. Uh, Plays very kind of an attacking football, not as pragmatic as Conte. So that works the best. If that doesn't work out, Pochettino or De Zerbi. But what the fans want and what the players want is to get the attacking football back at Spurs. Uh, to be really honest, if you ask me as a Tottenham fan, I wanted something different because we have always played great football. We have always had these players with flair, Bale, Berbatov, Modric, like Eriksen. But eventually we don't have anything to show for, right? We always played great football, but we don't have anything to show for. So it kind of made sense for me for the club to try and change the strategy and see if that works out for us. After trying it for 2 3 seasons, we now know that it doesn't work for us. So at least I would like to see the football that at least I would be happy to turn up to and just watch the game instead of just boring myself to death in that football. Just I was just like going through some of the stats, and I think Harry Kane in 17-18 season had scored 6 or 7 hat tricks in the season. I don't remember the last time he scored a hat trick. I really don't remember. He scored a few braces here and there, but I don't remember when he scored the last hat trick for Spurs. And that's because the way Tottenham teams are now shaped up. After 1 or 2 goals, we're just happy relaxing at the back. And that's what's happening with the club. So I would rather want Tottenham to come out all guns blazing, even if we lose next 2 seasons, just try and build a good and the foundation's there. The foundation's there. You have, like Anshuman said, you have Destiny Udogi coming in. You have Romero already here, who, I mean, Paratici actually made, like, I don't know what he did because when we got Romero, we were in Conference League and Nuno was our manager. And we still got Romero, who was the best defender that season at Syria. So we have Romero, we have Destiny Udogi, we have Kane Son, of course. And Charlison is something I think he can come out better. Pedro Porro has just been signed. Bissouma to come eventually, right? And Spence, of course. So we have the foundation. We just need to good. Even someone like Pape Sarr, who's really a very good midfielder. He's of course too young to actually show any brilliance right now, but in 2 years' time, I think he'll be better. So we do have the foundation. We just need two good central defenders. We need one good midfielder, probably an attacking midfielder. And that should just help us kick on in the next season where we can definitely finish in top four and then kick on from there. So that's what I expect from the board today. And of course, whoever the next manager comes in.
Yeah. Kaustubh, Alok mentioned that he believes that there is a foundation there in terms of having good centre backs and, of course, the likes of Kane, Son. But, we've spoken about Kane. It seems like he's having a great season because although he's being asked to drop deep, help up with the build-up, he still scored 21 goals in the Premier League, which is quite impressive at this stage in the season. But do you really feel like he has the patience to stick around for another project?
I think, at the end of it all comes down to him and what he wants. But I think the way Kane has played this season is slightly different to how he used to play under Mourinho. And actually, this is what Conte actually wants from a centre forward because we don't see him dropping as deep as he used to under Mourinho, or maybe as he used to for England as well. And that has sort of had an impact on the way Son has played as well. Because when Kane comes deeper into midfield. Son gets that room to run into and behind, and that used to be one of Spurs' main weapons, and that hasn't quite happened this season because we've seen Kane occupying the final third more often. He's not been dropping as deep, which means that Son has been forced to take people on. And the issue with Son has been that I don't think he has. I mean, he used to be that sort of player who used to take players on, but over the last 3 or 4 seasons, we've seen a decline in terms of his uh, numbers when it comes to taking players on and beating them. And he's not been coached because Spurs thought we will hire these managers who are so-called winners. And when you have these managers, they're not hands-on coaches like someone like Pochettino himself or someone like Alok talked about Julian Nagelsmann. He's a coach. He's a very hands-on coach. Now, if he comes in and tells Son that do something different, he's going to coach Son into that particular profile. Whereas if you look at someone like Conte or Mourinho, they'll try to make do with what they have because they have these short-term projects and they only care about winning. Whereas if someone like Nagelsmann comes in, he will make sure that he will coach Son into something different. He'll make sure that Son improves as compared to what he's been this season because the Son from this season has been absolutely, I mean, ridiculous in a way. I've never seen Son to be so one-dimensional. Even when that one dimension is not quite working out either, because as I said, Kane's not dropping deep, he's occupying the final third. Say Son hasn't been able to use his main strength. So I think if a new manager comes in, um, he'll make sure that. I mean, again, depends on who the next manager is and how he coaches the team to be. If we presume that he's someone like Nagelsmann, or if he's someone like Roberto De Zerbi, who I don't think is going to join Spurs at this point. But if we presume it's Julian Nagelsmann, I think it might be worth staying at Spurs because he, as I said, he's more of a hands-on coach, and he's 35, and he's not someone of the Conte or Mourinho mold where he's going to come in and not be that hands-on coach and delegate his team to an assistant, which Mourinho famously used to do with João Sacramento when he was in charge. And Conte pretty much does the same thing. He's not someone who's hands-on with his coaching or personal assistance of players. It said that Conte has never been the sort of manager to speak to players personally at a very deeper level about what's going on in their lives and all of that, and how to handle their own issues on the pitch and maybe off the pitch. Whereas Nagelsmann's famous quote is that, I mean, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something like uh, football management's 70 or 80% man management, the rest of it is tactics. So if someone like Nagelsmann comes in, he's going to make sure that two of Tottenham's best players don't just play at their best; they, in a way, improve as players as well. I mean, obviously we can have the example of Sadio Mane, who looks like he's fallen off a cliff at Bayern, and there've been complaints about how he can't take players on 1v1 at all, which is quite shocking. It's a completely different discussion because a lot of Liverpool players after leaving Liverpool have sort of fallen off a cliff physically themselves, be it Wijnaldum, be it Mane, or be it Divock Origi himself. So I think that's a different conversation. But Nagelsmann coming in will be the sort of thing where if Spurs, you look at the sort of lack of, I mean, I don't see a lot of Spurs people, the higher ups at Spurs to be at the same wavelength. And that goes back to the Paratici and the Levy divide as well, because I don't think they have a similar vision of the game. And I think when Spurs sort of, I think this is before Nuno was appointed. They had this weird selection of managers who were weirdly picked. There was no correlation between one or the other. There was Paulo Fonseca, who approaches the game in a very hands-on, attacking way, a very progressive brand of football, as he was at Roma or he now is at Lille. Then we had Pochettino himself, and then there was Rino Gattuso, whose footballing identity I've never quite figured out as to how he wants to coach his teams, and he plays a 4-2-3-1, whereas Paulo Fonseca is a back three manager. So there were too many discrepancies between the sort of managers the Spurs wanted to have, and Paratici was there at the club, which constantly tells me that something's not right at Spurs when it comes to identifying the direction they want to go in. And I mean, I don't think disagreements about what transfer you want to make is a massive issue at Spurs or at any club. But Paratici is someone who, is very opportunistic with signings. And I think Adama Traore was sort of opportunistic signing, which was missed out on. And Conte, that was one of the reasons why Conte sort of, I think he sort of fell out with the board after Adama Traore went on to play for Barcelona. And it was clear when Spurs ended up signing Jet Spence, Conte spoke publicly that I never knew that this signing was going to take place. So I think all of it shows that the higher ups at Spurs are not sure about which direction to go into. They've got varying, you know, viewpoints about do they build for the long term or do they stick to the short term build, like the Conte Mourinho bit, where
Yeah.
Levy thought, why don't we go on and get Paratici? I mean, without actually figuring out what Paratici actually stands for. Uh, I mean, people call him the king of free agents back in Italy or even Europe in general, but that shows a lot about the sort of sporting director he is. He's very opportunistic. Whenever he spots an opportunity, he goes for it. If he spots this young talent which hasn't been signed by anyone else, he takes that chance, which is what Spurs have done with I think Pedro Porro himself and a lot of other players. I think if Nagelsmann comes in and if Spurs stick to the sort of direction that they uh, want to stick to and make sure that Nagelsmann aligns with it. Uh, Firstly, I think Paratici might have his days numbered at Spurs, and Paratici's numbers at Spurs might anyway be, I think, done because of the case that is going on with Juventus. With he's sort of suspended, and we still don't know if his suspension applies to English football or not. But we'll see what happens there. But I think th- Paratici's days at Spurs might be numbered. He might not be there in the next couple of years. And I think that might favor Spurs a bit when it comes to bringing in Nagelsmann because, and also depends on who comes in to replace Paratici in a way because um, Levy would want Nagelsmann because I think he's aligning more towards a long term approach, whereas Paratici is more along the lines of, you know, uh, fix the problems right away, bring a winner, get trophies in, and all of that. The shorter term rebuilds and all of that. So I think Nagelsmann coming in will make sure, and Spurs aligning with that vision will make sure that I'm pretty sure that something positive will happen at Spurs. And I mean, we speak a lot about how Spurs and their financial issues. I mean, on paper they are financial issues, but I don't think they have these massive worries or anything. It's almost like when it comes to the top six, uh, they're probably fifth or something when it comes to their spending capacity and all of that. And the debt they have when it comes to the stadium debt, I think it's more long term than short term. That does bring upon an issue financially, but doesn't restrict them for spending about what 150 million every window. So I think, and Nagelsmann, we've seen the way Nagelsmann's Bayern Munich played. I mean, obviously got sacked there, but a lot of it was unfair because Bayern Munich have massive issues in the squad, be it their midfield. Eric Maxim promoting as their regular striker, which says a lot, and he had to make do with it. And Mane, as I said, has fallen off a cliff, and he had to make do with it, constantly change shapes to, cover all the issues that Bayern had in the side. But he made do with it, and he was there for the longer term, which Bayern didn't quite realize. I mean, and even despite the fact that they were paying him a massive amount, and they paid about what 25 million to fetch him from RB Leipzig. So I think if Nagelsmann's going to come in, I think Son, Kane, and a lot of other Spurs players are going to improve, and they will touch a different level. I mean, of course, that comes in with this caveat that Spurs um, stick to that vision, and they have in the past, and that there's proof of it with what they did with Pochettino. So I think if Nagelsmann does come in, it might be worth for Kane and Son to stay, um,
Hmm.
be it tactically or in terms of even in terms of the project that will be sold, because he's someone uh, who can still go out to Real Madrid and manage them. And we know what Real Madrid are. And I think Nagelsmann has already spoken to Real Madrid about a couple of years ago. So it won't be a massive surprise if Spurs end up missing out on Nagelsmann and he ends up managing Real Madrid after Ancelotti leaves in the summer. So I think this is the time for Spurs to react. Daniel Levy to react. And I think I don't see a manager out there. I mean, Thomas Tuchel was one, but obviously he's out of the picture now. But if Pochettino comes in, Son and Kane are players who've already played with him, played under him. They know what he's all about. Uh, but Nagelsmann is someone who's I think one of the smartest football people out there in terms of being a manager, in terms of how he puts forward his footballing ideas and how he uh, thinks that man management is sometimes more important than tactics. I think man management is probably what Spurs want as well. You know, the way they've been in the semi-finals of every possible competition around, and I think uh, having someone like Nagelsmann there is going to be revolutionary for them and for the players. So I think uh, if again the caveat, if Nagelsmann comes in, Kane and Son have to stay. I'm not sure about Son because again, depends on the sort of playing style that Nagelsmann puts into play. But Kane being one of the most complete strikers in world football, if Spurs follow the path that Nagelsmann is putting into place, there can't be a possibility where Spurs don't win a trophy. I mean, that's simply what I think, and I think Nagelsmann coming in at Spurs will be absolutely revolutionary.
Anshuman Kaustubh also pointed out there is sort of style clash at board level as well as on the pitch right now at Spurs. Which side do you see Spurs going? Do you see Spurs taking the longer route and appointing a manager who wants a clear, defined style of play, which is probably to keep the ball, play with the ball, play some attacking football, or the shorter option, which would probably be the more pragmatic option, and let's defend, nick a goal, stay solid at the back, short-term success, things like that.
After Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, I don't think Spurs fans will be able to tolerate another pragmatic manager. I mean, let's say someone like Massimiliano Allegri comes in. I mean, if you think Conte's football is back, wait for him to show up. So, the idea is that you try to do with it, you try to do with two serial winners and it didn't work out. It just shows you the reality that it's the outcome that drives the narrative and not the other way around. So, what you can try to do is go back to basics. There is no one out there that can guarantee you success. There is no such thing as guaranteed success. We like to think of it in such a way because it's nice for us as football writers to give into that narrative and write alongside it. But the sad reality is that there's no such thing as guaranteed success. You can have Jose Mourinho, you can have Conte. It may work, it may not work. They might be able to wield that narrative into shaping up that team to take them to a certain degree. It still might not end up in your favor. So you could get Julian Nagelsmann, in which I think the Premier League will be better for it if he shows up. But again, Costa pointed out, there's a very good chance Ancelotti walks out the door at Real. So how much success would Julian Nagelsmann have at Real is another thing altogether. But I think what Spurs fans would like right now is at least have the idea that they have a manager on board who has that man management aspect, who can bring these group of players together to play a certain kind of football and to play a kind of football that we can enjoy. Because before Jose Mourinho came in, there was no silverware to show for it. After Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, there is still no silverware to show for it. And the thing is, judge, if you, as a football club, your entire idea of success is predicated on winning a trophy, it's already very shallow. Now there are a few clubs out there like Juventus and Real Madrid who are very openly like, okay, trophy is the only thing we care about. Good for you. That has never been the thing at Spurs, and they have tried doing away with it for a while. I understand the appeal because as a Manchester United fan, you get the sense that okay, you don't have to win a trophy every season, but every 4 or 5 years, get one in the back just so that we keep that thing satisfied as well. So you tried doing that, it didn't work. So you need to get something in your corner, because right now you don't have anything. You don't have good football, you don't have silverware. So you need something to get back into your corner. So project manager makes more sense. Like Kaustubh said, Spurs better act now, because if Real Madrid come for Nagelsmann, it doesn't matter whether he lasts there for 2 months or 2 years. He would prefer to going there first and foremost. So that I think for all parties, it's best if they act right now, for Conte, for the club, and for any manager that is currently out there on the market. I wanted to point about whether Harry Kane would like to continue at the club. That's something I
Yeah,
wanted to say.
yeah,
That Harry Kane has himself to blame for still being at the club. And why I point it out that way is because there is absolutely no surprise that he wanted to leave, and he was working with English media to uh, part ways with the club in such a way that he could still be regarded in a nice way, and won't get any kind of boost, don't get disrespected for abandoning Spurs. He had that interview with Gary Neville where he was talking about staying at Spurs all the time, and the whole mushy thing, just to have to find out a diplomatic resolution in which he could leave Spurs. But the sad reality is he's left all the balls in Daniel Levy's court, when in the infinite wisdom of him and his brother, the two decided that Harry Kane at the age of 25 really needed a 6-year contract at Tottenham Hotspur. So the moment you sign that deal, that everything that happens to you after that is 100% on you. Because at the beginning of last season, there was a lot of furore about Manchester City wanting Harry Kane. I wrote a piece about this. It was titled along the lines of Harry Kane wants to leave Spurs, but can he? And the answer was he can't. Even though Manchester City would have liked, although even Pep Guardiola would say, I would much rather have Harry Kane than Erling Haaland, he couldn't have it, because that is not the kind of expenditure City are known for. And even though in that season they immediately broke their transfer record by going for Jack Grealish, when you look at the finances of that deal, insofar as that was the only big signing that they made, and the 100 million was supposed to be paid to Aston Villa in 3 seasons in 3 equal installments. So you understand how even that kind of expenditure made sense from a city lens. So playing hardball with Daniel Levy and spending 150 million on a 28-year-old footballer would never it's not never something City would have done. And again, Harry Kane, if he is looking to go out this summer, regardless of who comes in, he has himself to blame for not being in that for being in a situation where he cannot leave, because Daniel Levy is under no circumstances going to go to a club and say, okay, we are going to let him, we can't have him go for free, so have him for 20-30 million. Never happening. So Harry Kane is himself to blame for everything. After signing that 6-year contract, he has been very good. To his credit, one of the finest forwards the Premier League has ever seen, the third double centurion as far as the goals are concerned. All of that is very good. His best case for getting a big club and getting a chance for trophies is running out his contract. He'd still be the season in which he enter as a free agent, he'll still be in the age where he goes from 30 to 31. And when I talk about player and their ages, I never talk about their discrete ages, like this person is 30, 31. I always talk about the age ranges, like the season in which Harry Kane would be able to join another club on a free. We would go from 30 to 31. He would do that in July itself. But the point to make is he'd still have 2-3 years of prime ahead of him, and another club on a
yeah,
free would be much more likely to take him on. If not in the Premier League, then somewhere outside as well, if he wishes to take that chance. Opportunities will be there for him, but he needs to sit down with his brother, have proper conversation, say, Charlie, you are not doing a good job. You did not do a good job. I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And just see his contract down at Spurs, run it down, and just see what opportunities come his way at the start of next year, because he'll start getting those offers as a free agent. So Harry Kane has himself to blame, and if he wants to leave, he can. But again, he will need to be patient for at least 1 more year, because I cannot see Daniel Levy letting him go for cheap, and I cannot see another club spending mad money on him unless Manchester United gets on that takeover gets completed beforehand, and they decide in their infinite wisdom that spending 200 million on a player whose contract runs out in one season is a thing to do, which very much is a possibility, as nonsensical as it is. So yeah, choices have consequences, and Harry Kane made his bed when he made his. So it is what it is now, and now he has another chance coming his way to make a sensible choice.
a final question. Alok, given everything Anshuman has just mentioned, do you agree with him, A? And if you do agree with him, then it's happy days because Harry Kane will be around for another couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any club can afford him. Actually, any club can afford to speak to Levy when it comes to someone like Kane, right? Every single board, every single manager, every single chairman knows how hard is it to speak to Daniel Levy when it comes to any player, and Kane is his best player that he has had in the club since. I mean, probably Bale, but even Bale didn't do so much as Kane has done. Uh, yeah, I mean, I agree to a fact that Kane kind of made a foolish decision to sign a 6-year contract. Uh, but you also have to think that, when he signed that contract, Pochettino was still there. We're moving to the new stadium. We're actually having a great run in the league as well as in the Champions League. Considering all of that, of course, any player might think that uh, you know, uh, I will probably just securing my future, and I'm just staying with my boyhood club for as long as I could, because trophies will come. Of course, his whole family, I mean, half of his family is of course Tottenham fans, half is Arsenal. But yeah, I mean, he just grew up down the road. Uh, Played here since the age of 10, and uh, as you could see, some of the comments that started coming up today after he broke the record yesterday is that even in his first year as a scholar, he used to say, or he used to envisage that, I want to break the record. I wanna be the England's top scorer, and it's just the sheer will that he has, because he's not a talented player. He's not a gifted player, right? Whatever he has done out of just sheer will, just sheer hard work. He's always one of the first people to come to the training ground. He's always one of the last people to leave the training ground. Considering all of that, he obviously thought that, he would win something with Tottenham sooner rather than later. But when he signed that contract in 2018, nothing has worked in our favor since then, right? Now, where does he go from here? Of course, no club can afford him right now because it's not just paying money to Tottenham, but it's also the wages that he would want now to move to a new club. The rumors are that he might sign a contract extension at Tottenham, but will also have a release clause, probably be included in the release clause, because there will be some kind of a agreement with the club and Kane that, if you leave next year for free, we're not getting anything in return for you. So sign a contract, we'll put in the release clause, and we'll let you go for, let us say, £100 million next season. Now, my problem is, which club can actually afford him? City is never going to go for him now that they have gotten Haaland. I don't think they will go for Kane. He's never going to go to Arsenal and Chelsea. I don't think Liverpool, knowing their transfer history, will afford or will pay enough money to go for Kane. Then that just leaves us United, right? And although every club would want someone like Kane to be there, I'm not sure whether Erik ten Hag would actually go for Kane. Again, it's just my conjectures. He could go, could not go. I'm not sure about that. Uh, so, and he's never going to leave England until and unless he breaks that Shearer's record. He's not going to leave England. So, any overseas clubs are also out of the picture. Now that just leaves United, and I'm not sure whether they will bid for Kane this season. Definitely not this season. Next season, if he signs that contract extension, like a 2-year contract extension with a release clause in place, that if you don't get the Champions League or if you're not challenging for the league, all trophies will do that. Different thing. Coming to that one point that I think it's not a part of the discussion right now, but or not a part of the question right now, but Kane, broke the record yesterday. Do I see that? Does he need to win the trophy to prove his greatness? It does not. Of course, he wants to win the league or any trophy for himself as a player, as an individual. He would definitely want that, but not to show anything to anybody. It would be just that he wouldn't want to go at the age of 35 and think that, hey man, I could have won that trophy and I do not have a major trophy to show for. And that would be his personal regret. I totally get that. But he doesn't have to do that to show anybody that, what he's supposed to, because we don't remember Shearer for that league that he won for Blackburn. People don't even remember that he played for Blackburn. you always remember Shearer as Newcastle legend and a player who scored 260 goals, right? Uh, so he doesn't have to prove anything to anybody by moving to another club or getting that trophy or anything. I also think that winning FA Cup or League Cup or Europa League does not add anything to Kane's repertoire. Uh, I don't think those trophies actually will justify whatever he has done in his entire life. So it has to be League and the Champions League. Uh, I still feel going to United will also mean that he's just going to another new project which will start or which has started from this year, right? City was probably his best chance. I would say that if that transfer had materialized, he would have probably gotten won the league last season. Then, of course, 2-3 seasons back, he could have come back to Tottenham to retire at the club. But moving to another club which has just started their project now, and I'm not sure whether with what's going to happen with the new owners coming in and how the entire thing is going to pan out, I'm not sure whether he will move. So I'm pretty sure that he's going to stay here for another season or two. Now, if you get someone like Nagelsmann or Pochettino, that just helps him stay. I mean, at least adds to that point where he could stay a little longer. Uh, but we need to get that next manager correctly, even if we want Kane to stay here for another season or two. If that goes wrong, and if we don't improve next season from whatever we have done this season, then he's definitely gone. Then he's not signing that contract extension also. Yeah, that's, I think, but since he loves Tottenham so much, he would just sign that contract or that 1 year extension just so that he could give the club £100 million. Let's add the release clause. So I won't leave for free. I will give the club for something that that I've been here for, and then he will leave. So this season, definitely not. Next season, probably. It's up to whether United can bid for Kane or not.
All in all, I'm an Arsenal fan. I really hope Spurs continue to struggle as much as possible throughout the rest of the season. Kane leaves, and Spurs do not get the manager they desire. But anyways, thank you guys for joining. It's been fun. Anshuman, Kaustubh, and Alok. Let's see what happens with Spurs.